last couple of years on the AI side have made certain problems a lot worse. So if you think about the problems of things like phishing, right? So phishing, I send you a fake email and try to get you to click a link and then fill out a form where I steal your password or whatever the case may be. You know, very often, if you even think back like 6 years ago or 5 years ago, you'd get an email, and if you spent a little bit of time looking at it, you could tell it was fake. You know, there was either bad grammar, you know, misspellings, weird character sets, all these little things that were little giveaways. And if you spent some time inspecting the email headers, which most people don't do candidly, but you could always find these signs. With AI, that has pretty much gone out the window.
We're going through something absolutely historic.
Technologies across the board are growing exponentially.
It's a disruption that's going to completely redefine the way businesses compete.
In the next decade, we're going to lose 40% of today's Fortune 500 companies.
The exponential growth of computing is continuing.
AI is nowhere near its full potential.
Whether you like it or not, that the future cannot be stopped by anyone.
Welcome back to the Future Tech and Foresight podcast. I'm your AI host, Mark Verbenkov's deepfake avatar, and this is episode number 236. Over the past 3 decades, the cybersecurity landscape has transformed drastically from simple virus nuisances to highly sophisticated billion-dollar criminal enterprises. Today, artificial intelligence has fundamentally altered the threat environment by democratizing hacking and drastically lowering the barrier to entry for cybercriminals. Attackers now operate like digital unicorns, leveraging AI to deploy automated phishing campaigns, negotiate ransoms with flawless language generation, and scale their operations far faster than traditional defenses can manage. This rapid escalation highlights exactly why small and medium-sized businesses are more vulnerable than ever. A single compromised email from an external partner can quickly lead to devastating financial losses, demonstrating that legacy protections like SMS-based two-factor authentication are no longer sufficient. To truly secure modern infrastructure, organizations must move toward hardware-based access controls, continuous system patching, and comprehensive AI observability platforms that monitor automated interactions and agents across the entire network. Businesses can begin to stem the tide. Ultimately, mastering how to safely secure our AI integrations today will determine our resilience in the complex automated digital economy of tomorrow. A little bit about today's guest. Jeremy is the founder and CEO of Firetail.io and thrives on interesting challenges in the cloud, cybersecurity, data, and robotics domain spaces with the potential to have a positive impact. He tends to go towards entrepreneurial environments where people are highly motivated, moving at a fast pace, and where he can contribute more to their success. Snyder's specialties are cloud security, cybersecurity M&A, international business, business development, strategy, and operations. He is fluent in 5 languages and has a strong ability to analyze new industries rapidly, recognize key patterns, and design business models. That has allowed him to help rapidly growing companies go after new markets.
Great. Well, Jeremy, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. As I mentioned a couple of minutes ago, I am very much looking forward to getting your insights on this crazy cybersecurity world and the potential hacks. As I mentioned to you, and as I've mentioned on the podcast before, my company was hacked about 3 months ago. So really, I think I want to focus on having more cybersecurity experts on the podcast over time, because it's something that you don't realize how important it is until it happens to you.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming on and taking the time to share your insights.
My pleasure. Yeah, my pleasure. Happy to be here, Mark.
So the way I like to start off all podcasts is just, a brief understanding of what brought you into the work that you're doing. I'm getting more and more interested in cybersecurity, but you've been doing it for some 30 years or so. So curious to know what initially drew you into this work.
Well, what drew me into the work was actually failing as a software developer. I graduated college with a degree in computational linguistics, almost 30 years ago. And I actually got recruited by a language technology software company. I'm like, perfect fit. This is great. And I get in there and I think I'm this, hotshot 22-year-old. I speak 7 languages. I'm like, oh, language technology, this is perfect for me. got my degree, and meanwhile, most of the software development team is actually PhDs, and they're just far more advanced than I am, and especially on the technology that existed back then. This was early neural networks and things like that. And so effectively, I joined this company thinking I'd be a software developer, kind of flamed out on the development side very, very quickly, realized I was not up to speed, and got pulled into doing IT and cybersecurity work for them. The company was growing really fast, and they're like, listen, we love you, Jeremy. We definitely want you to stay on board. You're a great cultural fit, but your skills are not as good on this side as we need. But you get technology, you understand networks and, setting up servers and things like that, which was stuff that I had kind of learned. And so that's what actually started my career. And the funny thing is, I've actually never really had a strong push to go back and get into software development. I like understanding how software works and understanding, let's say, core architectural principles, but I've never had a huge drive to go back and turn myself into a developer. So that started it. I stayed with that company through the dot-com boom and bust and the rebuild of the company. And then that company got acquired in 2005. I moved on to another software company and then a video game company, again, running IT and cyber. Then moved on to a little cloud computing company called AWS for a a while. You might have heard of them. Yeah. I feel like they've done one or two things, but in any event, the early days of the cloud were really kind of a great transition in my career from being, hands-on keyboard practitioner to being out explaining to people better ways of doing IT and, how to make their cloud environment secure. Spent the next decade or so working in that space, really in the cloud domain very, very closely. And actually, the company that I was with got acquired 2 months into lockdown. And I had a brief moment where I really considered a career change. And cybersecurity, for people who haven't worked in it, it's often said that it's kind of this thankless job, that on the best of days, nothing happens. And on the worst days, everybody hates you.
Right.
And, and nobody really thanks you when, hey, just business as usual, we didn't get breached today, like, good job, Mark. Nobody comes along and says that to you, right? But, the 2-3 major breaches that I've been through, I took a lot of heat, and I had some battle scars and some learning and still some trauma looking back on at least one of them. One of them I laugh at, the other one I feel some shame and whatnot about. But I really thought long and hard about leaving the cybersecurity domain, but COVID was actually a refocusing element for me. What ended up happening was that I was the company that I was with at the time, we had a couple of the vaccine makers as customers, and we were helping them secure environments where we knew that they were running research around formulating vaccines and things like that. And I realized to myself, okay, first of all, I didn't know what I would do otherwise. And second, I'm never going to be the vaccine maker. That's not really my forte. But if I can help secure environments that allow people to do important work like that, whether it is vaccine makers or even, online gambling companies, I don't care. But if I can provide skills and expertise and understanding that allow companies to go forward, that's actually beneficial. So I think of my career as helping to enable innovation. And definitely, there are things that we're doing that are innovating right now around AI, but we think of ourselves very much as an enabling company. We're there to protect your environment, your research, your intellectual property, so that you can do whatever it is you're trying to get done. And that's really that COVID kind of consideration. And, that was kind of over the course of a couple of months, internal dialogue, and also with my wife, where we kind of made that decision to stay in cyber.
Very interesting. So you've been doing this for quite some time, or been in the field for quite some time. How have things evolved, let's say, up to 2022 when ChatGPT came about and all these the AI, the new AI age started to come about? I'm assuming into cloud was a big change. Things have evolved quite a bit. Has cybersecurity become more and more known by businesses? Are they considering it more up until the AI age, or was it just always kind of a background thing that people were, oh yeah, we kind of need this?
It's interesting that you phrased that question that way, because it's actually a really good way to think about how the industry has evolved,
Yeah.
to be candid. When I started my career, cybersecurity was not much of a thing. The companies at the time, it was just this like subsection of what you had to do to run IT at a company. And threats were pretty minimal. At worst, you had viruses that would get sent in email attachments. Still kind of a
Right.
problem, but they've changed form a little bit. But they were nuisances. They were more than anything nuisances. There was no organization around it. It was like, one guy in Pakistan thinking it was funny to send around something, oh, this will take down a bunch of corporate email servers or things like
Right.
that. From that time, I would say the first 5 years were kind of things like that we really just worried about, like, let's not disrupt our company network, et cetera. About 5 years later, we saw the first instances of organizations really targeting data, trying to steal data, trying to get data out of companies. And that was largely still through kind of viruses and things like that. That was the beginning of where we are today. And what's happened since that time frame, I'd call that like early 2000s to today, so the last 25-ish years of it, is that the acceleration curve has just increased and increased and increased. The number of ways that threat actors get data has increased. The ability for them to get data has increased. The ability for them to use automation tools and kind of, I always say this thing. Hackers have access to all the same technology that we have.
Yeah.
They might use stolen credit cards to get it, but they have access to, everything you can imagine. Oh, hackers have AWS? Yes, hackers have AWS. So I would say hackers have cloud, hackers have automation, hackers have AI. So all the things that have allowed for the acceleration of IT that you and I consume every day with mobile apps and whatever, all of that same infrastructure and enabling technology is there for threat actors as well. So that's been a huge driving factor behind the acceleration. The last couple of years on the AI side have made certain problems a lot worse. So if you think about the problems of things like phishing, right? So phishing, I send you a fake email and try to get you to click a link and then fill out a form where I steal your password or whatever the case may be. Very often, if you even think back like 6 years ago or 5 years ago, you'd get an email, and if you spent a little bit of time looking at it, you could tell it was fake. There was either bad grammar, misspellings, weird character sets, all these little things that were little giveaways. And if you spent some time inspecting the email headers, which most people don't do candidly, but you could always find these signs. With AI, that has pretty much gone out the window. Phishing emails look pretty much perfect now. And, even in other languages, I'm a dual citizen, I'm bilingual, speak a number of other languages. Finnish happens to be my other kind of native language, if you will. And it's a notoriously hard language. And so in Finland for a long time, phishing was not nearly as big a problem because there just aren't that many Finnish-speaking threat actors. That's gone. Even in Finnish, again, notoriously one of the hardest languages to master as a foreigner, these emails are perfect. So
Crazy.
That is something that has really changed in the last little while.
That's super interesting. Very interesting. So the democratization of hacking has happened essentially with AI.
100%.
And I would also assume this means that low-level hackers have increased their skills, so they're able to do larger hacks or able to do the hacks that they were, traditionally doing, whether phishing or otherwise, just at a much higher level of sophistication. Right?
All of the above. So the levels of sophistication are higher, and I'll talk about that in a second, but certainly the levels of automation and scale are much, much higher as well. Whereas a human can send out, I don't know, let's say 100 emails an hour, a machine can send out X 100, and an AI-powered machine can send out X thousand that are all personalized and customized and in the right language and with perfect grammar, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So the automation and the scale factor, 100%, this is a problem. The sophistication that has evolved over the last, call it 7-ish years, has gotten into really interesting levels. And I have a friend who is a well-known cyber speaker, Mikko Hyppinen, and one of the things that he always talks about is he said, if you took some of these gangs and you looked at their growth rates and their revenue numbers, these would be what we call digital unicorns. These are billion-dollar valuation organizations. They're criminal organizations, but they are, over 100 million a year in revenue. And you look at their kind of quarter-over-quarter growth trajectories and things like that. And if you're a venture capitalist looking at this, oh, all the charts go up and to the right, fantastic. Oh, you're AI native and you're, super cutting edge. Let's go. But also things around the level of sophistication on this side is that the business models have become incredibly repeatable and scalable. So you have now these companies that are specialized in individual bits of the chain. So there's something called IABs, or initial access brokers, and these are threat actors who specialize only in getting an initial into a company. So they compromise Jeremy or Mark or whatever. And they can do this through any number of methods. That is one way in. There are others who focus in probing for vulnerabilities and writing exploit code. And this is an area that very, very recently, this area has gotten a ton of attention recently because of things like the Anthropic Claude Mythos family and the OpenAI GPT Cyber family and things like that have come out that are incredibly good at finding vulnerabilities by scanning source code.
Right.
And when we think about the way most modern software is built, I don't write for our own software at Firetail. There are tons of things that we don't write. We write the very specific pieces that are our business logic, so to speak. And that's usually the way it's expressed is we're trying to do the things that are very specific to Firetail and how we help our customers solve problems. But for instance, there's all this infrastructure and kind of what I always think of as plumbing software that kind of connects system A to system B. And there's open source solutions for almost any permutation that you can think of. I need to get data from this kind of system into that kind of system. There's a great proven open source package out there that I can do that with. Well, threat actors can get that same source code off of GitHub or any of the places that you get open source code, scan it with one of these AI models, figure out, oh, there's a vulnerability in line 355. Now I can go scan the entire internet for all the companies that are using that software. I have an exploit that I can write to capitalize on that. So these kind of initial access brokers have evolved, very niche, specialized, good at a particular thing. Then they hand off or they sell really access to the criminal gangs. And these are the ones that you hear the names of, Lapsus, Shiny Hunters, et cetera. You might have heard any of these names in the news. Yeah. They're the ones who then have the ransomware that encrypts all your data. And they've also evolved their kind of monetization model where it used to be, I just go to you and I say, hey, Mark, you want your data back? 10 Bitcoin. Now it's, oh, you want your data back? 10 Bitcoin. Oh, you don't want to pay the 10 Bitcoin? Awesome. I'm going to leak your data to the world unless you pay 15 Bitcoin, kind of escalating threats. And, oh, Mark, you happen to work for a regulated company. I'm going to leak your data and report you to your regulator so you get, a slap on the wrist or a fine or maybe even shut down. So these kind of escalating monetization models have evolved. And one of the most recent things that I've heard is that, a lot of these threat actor groups are non-English speaking. They just use AI chatbots to do the ransom negotiations now.
Right.
So when I send you that request for 10 Bitcoin, you're not talking to me. You're talking to some chatbot that I'm using Meta Llama or some open source model to power. And I've given it my parameters for how I want the negotiation to go. And it speaks very competent English to you and says, hey, Mark, it's a real shame what happened to your company. We can get you back in business. Let's pay here. Oh, you're not willing to pay 10? How about 6? How about 4? Whatever the case may be, right? So all of this has just gotten so much more sophisticated and honestly professional as well.
Yeah.
And, there are kind of reputation scores around the threat actors. It's pretty well known that some of these gangs, even if you pay them, you're never getting your data back, where others are very, very good about getting you the decryption key. And, when they hit you again, they want you to know, last time we got you, you paid, you got your data back. Same is going to happen again. So it's
incentivizing to pay you for some of these.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And it's very hard for me as a cyber person to, there's a lot of talk from a policy level that you should never pay the ransom. And I understand the motivation behind it. And the motivation behind it is very, very simply, if you cut off the funding source, this stuff goes away, right? Yeah. But at the same time, I also understand the motivation to pay. If that data is the lifeline that keeps your business in business, and you've got your own salary and your employees and whatever you've built on the line here, it's very hard for me to give you a hard and definite, like, no, never pay.
Yeah.
I understand. I get it.
Yeah. Fascinating and terrifying. So this is all super interesting. Can we bring this down to a tangible level? As I talked to you, and again, I've mentioned on the podcast numerous times, we were hacked about 3 months ago, and I actually just figured out this past week that, and I think what you're saying makes a lot more sense in my mind now. I wasn't the initial person that was hacked. It was actually one of my clients, and he had one of his personal emails without two-factor authentication, and he had been hacked for like 8 months, and he had no idea. And then it seems like there was, I don't know, a trap laid, or there was something that was done that my team walked into, and then boom, we were kicked out. Like all of our admin was kicked out. They used very, very sophisticated bots from what we were able to see. Within 1 hour, they had spent $15,000 on the Google ads and things like that. So in my mind, from what you're saying, it was a hack that was sold off to maybe one of these other gangs that are able to actually implement the nefarious activity. Thankfully, we had a decent system, and we were able to take back control within an hour or so, within 8 hours. But the damage is still done, and we're still recuperating from all the activity that was happening. So, there's a lot of people that listen to this podcast that are kind of in my same position. Relatively new business owners, or people that are thinking about running a business, starting up a business soon enough. Two-factor authentication, I used to think, was excellent. You have that on, and then you're safe. We had two-factor authentication on. Doesn't seem like it's worth its weight in salt or weight in gold anymore. What can small businesses do to kind of prepare for these eventual hacks and takeovers?
Well, first of all, two-factor authentication is still a very, very good idea. It is not bulletproof, as you learned, but I would argue that in your case, if your supplier had two-factor authentication on, the risk of this whole thing happening goes down. It's not zero, but it goes down by a huge factor. From what you just described to me, my best guess as to what happened is that as you engaged with this partner that you're working with, you gave them access to some of your systems. And most likely what ended up happening is you gave them a little bit more access than they really needed. And this is a common mistake as well. So let's rewind for a second and kind of go through a couple of different steps of this for your audience of people who are, running or starting small businesses of their own. Okay, so you set up on Microsoft, you set up on Google. Those are one of the, pretty much the only two places to start. I really don't recommend for anybody to say, no, I'm going to run all my own servers in-house at this point. It's just, one, it's more trouble than it's worth. And two, what are you trying to do with your business? Unless you're a managed services provider who is in the business of providing IT support, this is not your core excellence, your core competence. Other people are better at doing this for you. And maybe actually starting with a managed service provider who can provision your IT environment for you is already a good idea. Just ask them some of these questions that we're about to go through. So first thing, you do absolutely want to turn on two-factor authentication. You do want to have recovery emails, etc. On two-factor, there's a couple of things to bear in mind. Not all two-factor methods are created equal. So you're going to see the most common one that I'd say almost everybody is familiar with is you log into some website and then you get a text message with a 6-digit code and you punch that in. Those are perhaps the most vulnerable of two-factor methods right now. There is all kinds of proof and known case studies out in the world of people like cell phone company employees selling your phone number to somebody else. And it's weird because you're like, I didn't lose my phone number, but you did for a brief period of time. And that period of time happened to be exactly when somebody got your username and password and then took over your phone number temporarily so that they could get that 6-digit code. This is called SIM swapping. It's known that the going rate on this is about $300 to pay a call center employee to reroute your phone number temporarily, right?
Crazy.
No. There are other techniques on this side that often, kind of fail One is what's called 2FA exhaustion, which is where I send you these codes one after the other, after the other, after the other. And I tell you, hey, I'm from IT support from your company. We're trying to fix an issue with your account. I'm going to need the 2FA code that comes across. And you're like, oh, well, that's Jeremy. He's in IT support. I'll give him that code. I can trust him. But they've, kind of impersonating somebody else. So this kind of 2FA exhaustion is another one. And there's a couple of edge cases where these 2FA systems are vulnerable on their own, these specific ones.
Yeah.
So better than that is the use of an authenticator application. And so this is an app that's on your smartphone, Windows, Android, and there's any number of them. There's Google has one, Microsoft has one, Twilio has one, any number of companies, Okta has one, et cetera. There's any number of trusted cybersecurity companies and vendors that provide these authentication tools, and they generate these rotating 6-digit codes for you. These are much more secure than getting the text message code. So that's my first recommendation. Maybe you go with an IT provider, maybe you set up on your own, but use that as your authentication method rather than your text message. If you can, these hardware keys are also super effective and super secure. YubiKey is the main one, but there's a couple of others as well. So I would absolutely start with 2FA. That is actually a super effective thing. Next thing, password managers and, complex passwords. Everybody hates them, myself included, but they are effective. And, not reusing passwords, not using simple passwords, all of these are effective methods for doing that. And believe it or not, little things actually increase the difficulty of your password by exponential factors.
Okay.
So going from 8 characters to 12 is, I think, 10 to the 4th more times more difficult for somebody to brute force your password. And in fact, it might even be a little bit more than 10 to the 4th. But in any event, lengthening your password makes it harder. Doing some of those things that every website that you sign up with nowadays makes you do, single uppercase, lowercase, number, special character, all of those things are also effective. Not using dictionary words in your password is effective. So make sure your password is not, future tech with 1, 2, 3 with a capital F and a capital T.
Right.
Like future tech is still more guessable than, FTRTH, right? With a mix of upper and lower. So things like that are actually effective mechanisms. And I know it's hard for you to remember it and it's hard for me to remember it, but your password manager absolutely can.
Yeah.
And there's any number of free ones out there, including ones that are increasingly built into your mobile device and or your web browser. So Google Chrome has one, Apple Safari has one. The Google Chrome will sync across your laptop and your mobile device if you're using Chrome. And the Apple one will sync across your Mac and your iPhone, et cetera. So, you don't have to go buy commercial tools, but you do need to use these things, right? So that's my second major recommendation is use some kind of password management and do some good password hygiene.
Yeah.
Now, beyond that, let's get into what happened to you a little bit and how to think about that. This is one of the things where I actually say a little bit of friction and a little bit of pain is actually a good thing. And here's what I mean by that. The easiest thing when you're partnering with some external partner like this is they're like, hey, we're going to help you with, let's say, whatever. Like in our case, for instance, we have a marketing firm that we partner with externally. We give them access to some of our internal Google Drive documents so that they can work on things like brochures and messaging and whatnot. And they have some access to things like website analytics, et cetera. The easy thing is to be like, well, let me just invite you to my Google organization and, set you up as a user or something like that has a similar access level to one of my employees or something like that. It's easy. It's fast. It is very frictionless. It lets them, get up and running very, very quickly. The problem is knowing what level of permission they have and then staying on top of that, because inevitably needs change over time. You have a new folder that they need access to, and oh yeah, now I have to share that. Oh boy, that's annoying. Oh, and I forgot to share it with this person on the partner side, et cetera, et cetera. So all of that seems like a pain in the butt, and I know it is, and it's very easy for me to say, do it the right way, as opposed to people who are living in the moment and trying to move forward quickly with their companies. But this level of friction will help you to kind of slow down and actually ask yourself, what's the level of access? They need access to that folder. Do they need access to read, or do they need access to write and edit and delete? Those kinds of questions when you're onboarding a partner are things that I would absolutely say are worth the little bit of in the moment pain and friction that they add in terms of like the risk trade-off that they can present to the organization. Those are like my top 3. And if I had to go a couple more, I'll just throw out there. Number one, keep all of your laptops up to date. Whenever your Mac or Windows tells you there's new security updates, just install them. The risk of them in the past, when I started my career, every now and then these things would break your laptop. That's just not the case nearly as often anymore. I won't say it's 0, but now it's like 1 in 200 or 1 in 500. These updates are super well tested, and the security updates that they bring are super critical. Same thing goes for your iPhone, your iPad, et cetera. Anywhere where you're working with, honestly, even your own personal accounts and your bank account and things like that, but especially your company environment and your company data. So stay up to date is kind of my next one that I would throw out there.
Excellent. I'm very happy to hear that. I wish I had heard all of that before 3 months ago.
Of course, everybody does.
But it really does sound like the research that I've done anyways, and the things that I've implemented, like having a YubiKey or multiple YubiKeys now, seems like I'm anyways on the right track. So for anybody listening that is concerned about any of this stuff, listen to what Jeremy said and implement some of these things, or all of them. Excellent. Thank you so much for that. Let's shift gears here a little bit and talk a little bit about what you guys are doing, also because the time's winding down here a little bit, and what the future of all of this is going to bring about with AI. I think we touched on it a little bit at the beginning, but let's look out, not 10 years because that's way too long now, but like 3 years, maybe 5 years or something like that, and have some insight into what you're thinking.
Yeah. So let me start by talking briefly, if I can, about what we're trying to help our customers solve for today, because I think that's actually important to understand in the framing of what's about to happen. And by the way, I agree with you. Trying to predict 5 years from now is like pretty impossible. And even predicting 3 years from now is pretty hard. I can give you a good guess at 18 months from now, but that's about it. So let's talk about like where we're at right now. So in my career, I've gone through like 3 major technology shifts. Okay, so when I started, we all had like laptop and desktop computers, and we sat on a small network, and our network was connected to the internet, but we had a lot of local IT stuff. We had this file server where we could share over our local network and things like that. One of the biggest shifts in my career has been the addition of mobile devices. And then people were like, oh, I need my email when I'm on the road. Great. Well, that opened up a little bit of threat. But what was interesting about that was that at the beginning, when that started, it started with like CEOs, and they came to IT people like me, and they're like, hey, I got this new Palm Pilot or BlackBerry. I want my email on there. And we're like, oh, crap. Well, this is a risk, but I can figure out ways to kind of manage it and make it okay for my organization. Next, there was SaaS. And we were, for instance, the company I was at, we were a really early Salesforce.com customer all the way back in 2002. And at the time, the idea of taking all of my customer database and putting that on somebody else's servers was kind of crazy.
Yeah.
But it was also, again, limited to one group. In this case, it was like sales and marketing. Okay. Then the next big shift that I experienced was the cloud. I did my time at AWS, and I helped a lot of customers make the move into the cloud and so on. And that was, again, just one group. It was typically IT and software developers who needed places to run code. My point in this is kind of telling you that we've had this kind of evolution of tech over time. And each step along the way, we have one little stakeholder group that's interested in it. What's different is AI, as I tell people, is everything everywhere all at once. And what I mean by that is it is not one stakeholder group. It is every stakeholder group. It is not one use case or one data set. It's every data set. I want to analyze everything from our financials to our marketing and messaging to my software and my code and my IT environment and automate operations and everything. And so the challenge that this is putting companies under right now is this massive blind spot. So you have all these teams within organizations that are moving really, really fast, adding new technologies, and IT and cyber teams are going, oh crap, I don't know who's doing what where. And so what we're doing at Firetail is actually like, we are not this, yes, we use AI in our product, but our product is not this insane agentic orchestration, blah, 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 insert 20 AI buzzwords here. Our product is an AI visibility and observability platform. We help organizations just know who's doing what where. That's the starting point, and that's the current challenge that everybody has. The reason that I think that this is particularly interesting and particularly a big problem to solve is that most of the companies that we talk to today, they're worried about what Jeremy and Mark are doing. Jeremy works in IT. He's trying to automate operations doing this. I need to understand what he's doing. Mark works in marketing and he's automating like ad campaigns and new website content or whatever the case may be, right? And so that's the problem that they have today. Where they want to get to a year from now, or maybe 9 months from now, is Mark automates a lot of his work and he has 10 agents that are doing things on his behalf. Every day they're checking new competitive landscape updates. Oh, our competitors launched this. What's our response to that going to be? How do we position against that? What's the competitive messaging that my sales team needs, et cetera? And getting visibility into all the things that are about to happen inside companies is really the key that is going to enable them to move forward with any level of confidence and certainty and security as they move forward. Because what needs to happen in that transition is you deploy all these marketing agents to do things for you. Well, we got to make sure that those marketing agents aren't inadvertently spilling our own secrets out onto the web.
Yeah.
We got to make sure that they're not using Mark's credentials to access systems that they're not meant to. And the only way you do that is you watch them. And you observe what's going on and you actually analyze the transactions. And these are transactions that look nothing like we've dealt with in the past in IT, because typically we've dealt with software systems that are super well defined and super well constrained. And for the first time, we have systems that look more like human conversations. And it's not determined in advance what that competitive analyst agent that you built is actually going to do. You don't know what it's going to decide to do first, whether it's going to decide to generate your messaging first and then go test it against the web, or whether it's going to go out to the web and gather a bunch of data and then do an analysis step or what. And so that's a big part of the risk, is that we have human-like mechanisms moving at a speed that we've never been able to deal with in the past or never had to deal with in the past. And so the thing that, coming back to your question, the thing that I worry about for a lot of organizations is they're going to be well-intentioned and they're going to try to kind of ease their way into it, but they won't understand kind of what we call in cyber the blast radius of the things that they're deploying. I built this agent. What did it actually have access to? I wanted it to do my marketing stuff. I gave it all my marketing folders. But did I give it permission to read and delete from my marketing folders? And we've seen enough cases of this so far where, software development agents have actually blown away entire environments because they determined that that was the fastest way to deploy the new software that they were building, by the way, at your command. And it's the kind of thing where, you actually need to observe it and watch what's going on and understand, how they make decisions and do things. So that's the near-term future that I'm really kind of concerned about for our customers, and where a lot of customers are kind of working with us to say, like, okay, how are we going to get all of that visibility and monitoring in place that allows us to then know what we are doing with our agents?
Right. And I also, as you're describing this, we don't need to go into the orchestration layer, but I think just visibility of what these agents are doing it's definitely more than what one human can do, right? So you're
100%.
You need to have kind of an AI observation layer on top of the activity layer. So are you also seeing like management is being removed to kind of like human level management is being removed to like a meta level management where you are orchestrating an AI management layer that's observing the actual AI actors?
Yes and no. So
Okay.
what we're seeing right now is that the management is still at the same layer that they're at before, but to your point, no human can analyze the volume of, interactions that are happening like an AI can. So what we're seeing is that the person or the entity feeding the report to management is
Mhm.
increasingly AI.
Mhm.
So we've got this whole workforce that's out there doing their things, and let's just continue with the marketing example. And they're doing their competitive analysis and messaging, et cetera. And they've done X number of prompts with Y number of AI systems, and they've deployed Z number of agents across them. And at the end, what that manager needs to see is what all did my team do, including the AI efforts of my team. So it
Mhm.
uses another AI to analyze all that. And then that comes to, Jeremy, the marketing boss, who looks at all this and analyzes the results and then adjusts strategy accordingly.
Mhm.
Now, where that goes in the future is still very much an open question because, like I said, the where we're at today is just looking at the humans. Where I expect to be at in, it'll depending on your organization. Some are already building agents. Some are like, oh, we're 6 months away from agents. Some are, we've got a couple proof of concept, et cetera.
Mhm.
So whether it's, 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months away, whatever, but that is inevitably where many of these organizations are going towards. And I think, to your point, it will be AI reporting agents that surface the data for management decision making.
Yeah. Super interesting. And then maybe one final question on here. If you have these layers of AI actors and managers and observers, et cetera, you mentioned that some of these AI agents, and I have heard of these. They're wiping out entire environments. I've also heard like entire companies get shut down because everything gets deleted at the worst case scenario. Going back to the hacking, right? Hackers are now going to have access, or they're going to be able to in some way get access to these AI agents. That if the agents themselves have access to multiple layers of your company, it seems like we're just opening the door a little bit wider for these consortia of hackers to be able to impact companies even more so than before.
That is a huge risk, and that is a real risk.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that I think thankfully we're seeing is a little bit of a concerted effort on the part of, Anthropic and OpenAI in particular, who are kind of the two leaders in developing new models and also models with special cyber capabilities, is they are going deliberately slow and being very selective in who they work with.
Okay.
And that is a good thing. So there is at least a little bit of recognition that we don't just want to throw the door wide open and let these capabilities be accessed by anybody anywhere. No, there is at least a risk that we could be opening up too much exposure too quickly. And so a little bit of kind of moderation and selectivity in terms of who gets access to what. And look, I mean, just on the point of how selective these companies are, as we record right here, we Firetail, I think we're one of the most innovative and leading companies in the field of securing AI out there, and we don't have access to these models yet.
Right.
So the Anthropics of the world, they're choosing who they partner with, and fair credit to them, they're doing a pretty good job of being pretty deliberate about going slowly. That won't last forever. And that is one of the things that I think is concerning a lot of people that I know in the cybersecurity industry. One of the biggest areas, and if you or your audience has heard of the Anthropic Claude Mythos family, that got a lot of headlines about a couple of months ago, like, oh crap, 0 day is coming and it's going to be this apocalypse and whatnot. And a lot of people view that as an AI security problem, and it's actually not. It's just the acceleration of the ability to analyze insane volumes of source code and look for vulnerabilities that you might have never thought of before. And so this in the cyber domain, and I don't mean to get too technical, this is under the bucket of something that we call vulnerability management, which the short way to think about it is updating from version 1 to 1.1 that fixes that security weakness. It's literally apply updates. And what we as an industry have not been great at patching because in a lot of larger environments, there's always just too many things to patch. And so you're just overwhelmed by it. But what has been a good wake-up call is the recognition that when that day comes that this stuff does get released to a broader audience, you better be ready. You've been getting warnings for months and months at this point. You know what you're exposing to the outside world, and you know that you should have been patching this stuff. Right. And now the incentive for patching it has just gone up, by a lot. And so you have to do better. And like I said, I think it's been a good wake-up call that is getting people like a little bit more motivated to prioritize this and take it seriously. Whereas in the past, it was always like, well, I know I have some stuff that's sitting out there at the edge of my network, but as far as I know, nobody's going after it, so we're probably okay. And that's just like not an acceptable attitude going forward.
Right. Super interesting. Final question, and I think I already know the answer to this. Do you see these hacking unicorns continually going up and to the right, or do you see with these new layers of security that you've been talking about, do you see some leveling off on some of their growth?
Yeah. So my personal opinion, and ask me again in 2 years, and we'll see where we're at.
Yes.
I think it gets worse before it gets better. But when it gets better, it does level off.
Okay.
So I do think that the ability to apply patches at scale intelligently gets better over the medium term. Not maybe in the next 3 months, but in the next 6. And similarly, I think that the ability to, create a new small business and have it be secure by design on Google or Microsoft or whatever technology platform you choose to run on, that also gets better over time. And you have an AI assistant there as you're setting up your new company that tells you, hey, Mark, you should really set up two-factor right now. Or, hey, Mark, you just partnered with Future Tech and Foresight.com and you gave them access to your Google Drive. You gave them a little bit more than they really need. We should actually turn off that delete permission for them. Do you want to do that now? Yes or no? All of that stuff is actually going to get better. So I do think that we'll see that kind of level off and in fact, like start to decrease, not just level off, but actually decline. It might be 18 months before we get there. It might be 24, but I do think that there is a positive outcome on that side.
Perfect place to end the podcast on an optimistic note. That's
there we go.
Excellent. Yeah, because this has been a very dark cloud on my life and on my business, as you can imagine. So to hear that these guys are going to be impacting negatively over the, if it takes a year and a half or 2 years or something like that, that's really good to hear. Jeremy, thank you so much for coming on. As I said before, I really wish I had you on, 3.5, 4, 5, 6 months ago. But if at the very least, if this podcast can be listened to by one other business owner that implements some of the stuff that, as you've said, I've implemented over the last couple months, then I think we've done our job at the very
Absolutely.
So, thank you so much for coming on. We'll have your website and your LinkedIn up on the show notes. Are there any other places that you want people to watch out for what you're doing and maybe potentially reach out to you?
People can reach out to me anytime. My email is super easy, jeremy@firetail.ai. And this is firetail like the bird, not like a fairy tale. So that's the tail spelling in there. Super easy. Just reach out anytime. But those are the best places.
Perfect. Well, again, thank you so much for coming on. Really appreciate it. And thanks for spending the time sharing your insights.
My pleasure, Mark.
Great.
My pleasure.
Thanks. Well, thanks for listening to this week's Future Tech and Foresight podcast. If you like what you've heard here, there are, of course, a number of ways that you can support the podcast. The best way would be to leave a review on Apple Podcasts or give a rating on Spotify, which you can find a step-by-step explanation for on the futuretechandforesight.com website. Alternatively, feel free to leave a comment either on the episode show notes or the YouTube channel where you can see video recordings of the interviews. And finally, if you are part of an organization that is aware of the disruptive and transformational impact that emerging and future technologies will bring and want to know more, Please get in touch to hear about the strategic foresight services that we offer and how we can help future-proof your organization and take advantage of the phenomenal opportunities available to survive and thrive in the future.
A lot of future-shocked people and future-shocked institutions in our society are simply overwhelmed.
Once there is superintelligence, the fate of humanity may depend on what the superintelligence does.
Science fact is catching up to science fiction.
The first truly intelligent machine will be the last invention that humanity needs to make.
The only scarcity that will exist in the future is that which we decide to create ourselves as humans.
Within a 10-year design revolution, we can have all humanity living the highest standard of living anybody's ever known.
Progress is accelerating at an exponential pace, and it's going to reach a point where progress is so fast it's going to be a singularity.
We are probably one of the last generations of Homo sapiens.
Every single headline points to the birth pangs of a Type 1 civilization.